Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff, presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Mike McCarthy is producer behind the boards, and we got a taste of some FCS football last week in Week 0, which just sets the table for us to get our football fix this week as college football officially opens with Week 1. The FCS season will be in full swing this week, so let's take a look at what we have on tap for this episode. When Week 1 kicks off, it only means one thing: non-conference scheduling, which also means that there will be some games between the FCS and FBS that are primed for some upsets, and we'll tell you which teams should be on upset alert this week. We will also give you a few FCS NFL draft prospects that you should keep a watchful eye on as well. And with the full slate of games on the schedule, we'll preview a bunch of them and give our sure-to-be-wrong predictions. But first, let's take a look at some of the big storylines in the FCS as we get things kicked off by going into our 4-minute offense. There are 20 head coaches in the FCS that have at least a decade in at their program. That's more than the FBS, which only has 15 coaches that can say that. The reason why tenure is important is because it ties directly into both recruiting and development, which brings stability. High school recruits want to know that their coach won't leave after a season or two, and they want to see a path to development in order to become a better football player. William & Mary head coach Jimmy Laycock is the longest tenured coach in the FCS as he enters his 38th season in Williamsburg. Laycock's tribe is the model of consistency as they have only 11 losing seasons in his 38 years, and 5 of those were less than 5 wins. So even in losing seasons, the tribe are still extremely competitive. Last week, we were treated to 4 games on the FCS schedule as Florida A&M knocked off Texas Southern 29-7 after an impressive performance by the Rattler offensive line and their defense. Portland State hung tough with BYU in a loss of 20-6, and Portland State's defense I thought was very impressive in that ball game. Chattanooga got word that their star quarterback Alejandro Benefield wasn't going to play due to an academic issue before the game and had to go out there against Jacksonville State with quarterback Nick Tiano, the former Mississippi State transfer, and they ended up losing that ball game 27-13, but the Mocs defense was able to keep it close for a while. And the Colgate Raiders went out west to California and were able to handle the triple option attack of Cal Poly as they defeated the Mustangs 20-14. Now, we were supposed to have a 5th game on Sunday between Richmond and Sam Houston State, but that game was postponed because of Hurricane Harvey. Speaking of Hurricane Harvey, we don't know how that will affect games this upcoming weekend involving the FCS. Games like Richmond, Sam Houston State, Houston Baptist, Texas State, Prairie View, A&M, Texas Southern has already been canceled. Southeastern Louisiana at my Louisiana Raging Cajuns, Northwestern State at Louisiana Tech, and South Carolina State Southern could all be affected by weather, which could cause games to be rescheduled, delayed, postponed, or even canceled. So we'll continue to follow this story all week long. On a more positive note, let's hand out some accolades from last week's action. Offensive Player of the Week goes to quarterback Ryan Stanley of Florida A&M, who went 19-32 for 217 yards and a touchdown, including a 9-yard touchdown run as well. He was efficient and moved the ball well down the field, and if he can keep this up for a full season, the Rattlers can be dangerous in the MEAC. Defensive Player of the Week goes to the entire Jacksonville State Gamecock defense. They made life miserable for Chattanooga quarterback Nick Tiano, picking him off twice, including a 52-yard pick 6 by linebacker Jonathan Hagler. All-American cornerback Reggie Hall and All-American defensive end Darius Jackson also chipped in with an interception and a TFL respectively. And that lone TFL for Jackson helped him become the all-time leader in that category for the Gamecocks. The Specialist of the Week goes to Colgate's Chris Pucci, who booted 2 field goals against Cal Poly, a 27-yarder and a 35-yarder. And those 6 points gave the Raiders the points needed to knock off the Mustangs 20-14.
I think the FCS gives a student athlete a chance to really develop in the classroom and on the field. And I don't think there's anything that gets in the way of the development of the student athlete. You know, whereas in sometimes other conferences, other levels of play, I think there's some things that could sway a student athlete in a wrong direction here or there. But I think at the FCS level, I think it's all about the student athlete. I think it's all about his development in the classroom and also on the playing field. And it really it keeps your values and your goals right in front of you. And I think there's less things that are going to take you away from those things.
Each year in college football, there's an FCS over FBS game that just drives the fans crazy. Last year, we had some good ones like North Dakota State over Iowa, Illinois State over Northwestern, North Carolina A&T over Kent State, Richmond over Virginia, and Northern Iowa over Iowa State, just to name a few. But then in total, there were 10 FBS upsets last season. So here are a few games this week that could be primed for FCS victories. Tennessee State travels to Atlanta to take on Georgia State. This game lands firmly on our list because the Tigers are not your average FCS program. TSU has a ton of FBS transfers on this squad, starting with quarterback Treon Harris, who is coming over from the Florida Gators. And there are 10 FBS transfers in total that'll either start or see significant playing time for the Tigers. So they match up really well with the Panthers. Georgia State will be opening up their new stadium, formerly Turner Field. The Panthers' strength on defense lies within their secondary, which matches up well with the Tigers' offensive strength, the receiving core led by wide receiver Patrick Smith, who's an NFL prospect. Now, the biggest challenge will be whether or not the Panthers can win along the lines of scrimmage. I think that's where they'll struggle. Look for Tennessee State's defensive end and NFL prospect Ebenezer Ogundeko to have a big day. I like the Tigers. Fordham travels up the Hudson River to take on the Black Knights of Army West Point. 2 years ago, the Rams knocked off Army 37-35, and two of the key pieces in that upset still remain on this squad, quarterback Kevin Anderson and running back Chase Edmonds. Fordham will be a very good team in the FCS and have a puncher's chance in this one because of their offense, but Army is coming off a victory over Navy, a bowl game appearance and victory over North Texas, and returned 16 starters, 7 on the defense that was one of the best against the run in college football. Look for them to avoid the upset in this one. James Madison and East Carolina will feature two things that we know for a fact: exciting offense and a lot of purple. These two teams match up very well against one another, which is why this game makes this list. The Dukes are the reigning FCS national champions, and ECU is coming off a subpar 3-9 season. A lot of the Pirates' struggles were on the defensive side of the ball. They had issues stopping the run, giving up 5.4 yards a carry. The hope is that experience with 6 starters returning will help them be much better this season. That may be true, but I don't think it starts here. James Madison is one of the more dominant offenses in football. I think they pull off the upset here against East Carolina. This is the first meeting between Tulane and Grambling. This is a game of intrigue because of Grambling State's quarterback Devontae Kincaid leading an explosive offensive attack, and this Tigers team nearly upset the Arizona Wildcats last season and have shown the ability to compete at a high level. Now, there's a major difference with this ball club. They lost a lot of playmakers on defense and at wide receiver. Tulane wasn't as bad as their 4-8 record indicated. They were a young team with a new coaching staff that was trying to figure out things as they go along. This year, they're experienced, especially in the trenches, and will pose a huge threat with their running game. I like the Green Wave to win this one at home. I feel like Northern Iowa beats Iowa State every season, but in reality, it's been an even 3-3 in the last 6 games between these two outstanding programs, with the Panthers winning 2 out of the last 3. Defensively, the Cyclones have to get better against the run. Offensively, they have a tremendous wide receiver in Alan Lazard, but will they be able to run the ball better this year is the question. I still like the Panthers in this game. Their offensive line, in my opinion, is excellent, and they'll slowly wear down the Cyclones up front in a low-scoring physical contest. Let's take a look at some of the NFL draft prospects and their matchups this week that you want to keep an eye on. We talk about Chase Edmonds a lot on this program, and rightfully so. The 5'9", 200-pound senior tailback combines everything that you look for in a runner: vision, elusiveness, and game-breaking ability. He showcased all 3 of those 2 years ago against Army and will be looked upon in this ballgame to put together another excellent performance. Keontae Anderson out of Jackson State is a very good defensive end that may project as an outside linebacker as a pro. What's been impressive about his game is his ability to hold his own at the point of attack. This week, the Tigers are going up against TCU, and Anderson has an excellent opportunity to showcase his pass rushing skills, as they'll have to find ways to disrupt Kenny Hill and that Horned Frogs passing offense. Nick DeLuca is one of my favorite players in college football. He's a talented linebacker that can play all 3 spots, in my opinion. Last year, he virtually missed the entire season and now is back at 100%. He was on the Senior Bowl watch list last season and is back on that list again, so it shows you how much the pro scouts feel about his game. DeLuca does a great job on both ends of defense, and in this game against Mississippi Valley State, you'll get to see his ability in pass coverage a lot. Speaking of ability and coverage, Central Connecticut State's Javon Elmore is another player returning after missing the entire 2016 season. Elmore has a little bit of Joe Hayden in his game. He's an excellent matchup corner that's strong in run support as well. Both will be put to the test as the Blue Devils travel to the Carrier Dome to take on Syracuse in their up-tempo offense. So I'll be keeping a watchful eye on Elmore's ability to cover the deep ball. All right, it's prediction time, so let's just jump right into the fray as we preview a big-time matchup this Thursday night between Kennesaw State and Samford. This is going to be a really good game. The Owls should contend for the Big South title this season. It's been a joy to watch head coach Brian Bohannon build this team into a contender. Their spread option offense returns 9 starters and will be a challenge to defend against all season long. Now, the Bulldogs lost 3 of their 4 top wideouts to graduation, but they still have both quarterback Devlin Hodges and wide receiver Calvin McKnight to get the offense jump-started. Defensively is where the Bulldogs, in my opinion, have made some strides, so look for linebacker Shaheed Salmon to play a huge role in this one. I like Samford in a close one. It's the Route 1 rivalry between Delaware State and Delaware. The hope is that on defense, continuity yields positive results for the Hornets. Now, Delaware State has 10 starters returning on that side of the ball, the same number that the Blue Hens have returning on that side as well. New Blue Hens head coach Danny Rocco knows the strength of his offense lies within the running game, which is an area where the Hornets struggled to stop last season. So look for that to be the case in this one as well. I like Delaware. The Thursday night throwdown is being called as Maine travels down to Durham, New Hampshire to take on the Wildcats. The Black Bears will be solid on offense this season, especially up front. Some of the questions lie within the front 7 on defense, where they lost some premier talent. The Wildcats also lost a good one in running back Dalton Carlson. They were able to scratch and claw their way into the playoffs last season for the 12th consecutive year. Now, this is a big game in the FCS, but also in the CAA early in the season. I think Maine is catching the Wildcats at the right time and will win this ball game. Duquesne, South Dakota State is probably the most underrated big game on the Week 1 schedule. The Dukes enter this matchup with the best offensive line in the NEC, led by Ben Hughes, and the best backfield, led by sophomore running back A.J. Hines, who won the Jerry Rice Award last season. Now, on the flip side, the Jackrabbits have the best quarterback situation and receiving core in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Quarterback Taron Christian, wide receiver Jake Winicky, and tight end Dallas Goddard are premier talents. Their offensive line is also one of the best in the nation. Now, this game will come down to which defense can you trust. I like South Dakota State in this ball game. The Dukes are breaking in a new starting quarterback, and that could stymie their offense coming out of the gate. The Jackrabbits, in my opinion, are a lot of folks' preseason pick to get to Frisco, Texas. This is a huge game in the Southland Conference between McNeese State and Nichols. Both teams had to alter their practice routine this week as they're getting hammered by residual rain from Hurricane Harvey. Both teams were young squads last season. The Colonels were the most surprising, however, finishing 5-6 with a near upset of the Georgia Bulldogs. This team has 2 standout playmakers in quarterback Chase Forcade and defensive lineman Sully Leach. Both were freshman phenoms last season. Now, the Cowboys had a rare down season last year and now boast a ton of experience on both sides of the ball. And I'm a big fan of their quarterback, James Tabari. And I like the fact that head coach Lance Guidry is taking over the defensive calls this season. That's where he made his hay and ultimately what got him the head coaching job. That's where you're going to expect to see marked improvement over last season. Now, will the Colonels be able to run the football this year? That's going to be the biggest question. That ended up costing them last season's matchup against McNeese State. It made their offense one-dimensional. So to me, I think that's the biggest unknown that has me siding with the Cowboys in this one. McNeese State will be a tough challenge for many in the FCS. I love big-time matchups in Week 1, and that's what we have here as Villanova takes a short trip upstate to battle Lehigh. Now, this was a great game last season as the Wildcats knocked off the Mountain Hawks 26-21 in Villanova. A few minor differences in this matchup as Villanova will be led by new head coach Mark Ferrante as he takes over for the legendary Andy Talley. For the most part, on the field, everything will remain the same. The Mountain Hawks are loaded on offense with the best offensive line and receiving core in the Patriot League. Quarterback Brad Mays is now the full-time starter, and they have a talented all-conference running back in Don Bragalone. It's strength versus strength in this matchup as Lehigh's passing game is going up against one of the best secondaries in the nation, led by safety Rob Roll and cornerback Malik Reeves. It'll also be an interesting battle in the trenches as Villanova has to replace defensive end Tano Passigno and offensive tackle Brad Seaton. The questions for Lehigh are on the defensive side of the ball at all 3 levels, so look for a tightly contested game with the Wildcats muscling their way to victory because of their ability to control the line of scrimmage. Lafayette travels to the Jersey Shore to take on the Monmouth Hawks. New head coach for the Leopards, John Garrett, is excited to get this season kicked off, as he should be, because their defense, which was a problem last year, should be vastly improved. Their biggest concern, in my opinion, is settling in on a starting quarterback. Monmouth looks to get back to their winning ways this season, and they will be breaking in a totally renovated stadium this year. The Hawks have three premier players this season in offensive lineman Alex Thompson, safety Mike Basile, and wide receiver Reggie White Jr. Look for the Hawks to open up Kessler Field the right way with the victory. They are strong along the offensive line and in the secondary. Intriguing matchup in the state of North Carolina between North Carolina A&T and Gardner-Webb. The Aggies have a lot of returning playmakers, but they'll be missing the biggest one of them all in running back Tariq Cohen, who's now with the Chicago Bears. How they replace him will be what everyone will be watching this upcoming season. They do get back a healthy quarterback, Lamar Renard, throwing behind a stellar offensive line led by NFL prospect Brandon Parker. Both Gardner-Webb and North Carolina A&T lost a ton of talent defensively within the front seven. The running Bulldogs hope that their ground game can take advantage of those Aggie losses up front. Look for quarterback Tyrell Maxwell to take big strides in the passing game this season, but I do like the Aggies to go into Bowling Springs and knock off Gardner-Webb. Look for tight end Leroy Hill to have a huge day over the middle of the field. It's the MEAC SWAC Challenge between the South Carolina State Bulldogs and Southern University Jaguars, and this year the game moves away from Florida and will be played in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at A.W. Mumford Stadium, home of the Southern Jaguars. Now, the Bulldogs had a rare down year last season. They started to get hot around the midway point and were able to finish with a 5-6 record. You know, a Buddy Pugh coach team will be well coached and strong along the offensive line and on defense, and they will keep a solid running game. The questions in this ball game will come at the quarterback position and in the secondary. They will have to find consistency in both spots if they want to have a winning season. Southern has replaced the SWAC's all-time leading rusher in Leonard Tillery, but they still have quarterback Austin Howard, who is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the FCS, and I like their defense with defensive end Aaron Tiller and cornerback Danny Johnson, who's a ball hawk. Southern is one of the better teams right now, and I think they will win this ball game. So that's it for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and if you miss any one of our episodes or want to watch them again, visit the website footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff, and don't forget to go on iTunes and subscribe to the FCS Opening Drive podcast.